From WXXI News, this is Connections. I'm Matt DeTurck, Artistic Director at the Little Theater, filling in for Evan Dawson. Our connection this hour was made more than 50 years ago when the city of Rochester was struggling to find a unifying identity. Thankfully, young graphic designer Lee Green was on the job, and he designed our now iconic Rochester City Mark, the Flower City logo. But good, or great, graphic design is more than just a simple picture. An icon, a logo, has to represent something, and somehow, through line and form, it has to inspire emotion in people. That's a lot to ask of one little logo, but the Rochester City Mark has risen to the challenge and stood the test of time. And the story of how it was created and how it fuels community pride is inspiring and rich enough that there is now a feature-length documentary about it. The film, City Mark, a Rochester icon, premiered back in May and has been rolling out free screenings around the Rochester community with more coming up. And I'm so excited today to chat with some of the people responsible for the Mark, for the film, and for its impact on the community. Joining us here in the studio is Erich Lehman, artist, designer, and curator of Gallery 1975. Barbara Pierce, the City of Rochester Communications Director.
Hello.
Nate Miller, City of Rochester Digital Media Specialist and filmmaker involved with the doc. And joining us via Teams is Lee Green, the City of Rochester's first graphic designer and the City Mark originator. Hi, Lee.
Hello.
Thank you all so much for being here. I am, as someone who is a graphic designer, now an artistic director at the Little, but worked at the city. I think graphic design is so important, but I also have so much community pride. And so literally when I was told that the city was working on a documentary about the logo, I was like, oh, this is perfect. Like, this is so exciting. And I think even better, it's really good. It's a really good film. And I feel like reinstilled in me that sense of pride about our community. So huge kudos about it. Nate, I do want to start with being like, what was the impetus behind being like, you know what, we're going to make a documentary about a logo?
The impetus. Well, I'm not from Rochester, but I've lived here for a while. I moved up in 2010. Spent a while as a news photographer, and it's everywhere. It's just such a great story. I mean, long story short, it's a great story. It's something that we can all agree on. Everybody's doing something different with it. I started working for the city in 2018 in the Communications Bureau, and we had a little bit of downtime during pandemic years. So I started, I thought, this is something that I am in a unique position. We, as a communications team, are in a unique position to get to the bottom of this. Where'd it come from? Everybody's using it. Get some questions answered. So, yeah.
Matt, it was the first meeting I had. So I joined the city with Mayor Evans in January of 2022. And we looked back, and it was January 11th, 2022, when Nate and I met for the first one-on-one. So I gave a lay of the land, and he said, hey, FYI, in 2026, this mark is going to be 50 years old. And he had a thought about this documentary already formulating in his mind. So I was all about it. And I'll tell you, it's even bigger than the documentary. As you know, there's a book we're going to be putting out. There was a festival that we held this summer. We blew it out of the water, and the full comms team got behind Nate's vision to celebrate this moment. And I don't think we could have picked a better year to take some time to celebrate Rochester Pride.
And I think that's what's so amazing about this is that's kind of what you always hope for, is something that you make or you do kind of has that kind of sense of people rallying around it, that sense of community. So Lee, I want to ask you, as the first graphic designer for the city, did you think that something that you made would have this kind of longevity to it?
I never thought about it at the time. I hoped it would have a degree of longevity, but marks for corporations and cities sometimes have a way of going through iterations and changes that have very little to do with a mark and more about folks that are, managing the organization. So It's very gratifying that it has endured as it has, and it's exceeded my expectations in terms of endurance for sure.
Absolutely. Which I think is amazing about it. Can you take a moment and pull us all the way back to like your initial like thought process, or as you're making it? Like there is an amazing part in the doc which talks about you combining some visual elements. Can you walk us through a little bit of what makes that flower logo tick?
Oh yeah, and let me, if I can, just for a moment before that, speak to what was going on within the city and the visual expressions of the city at the time.
Sure.
This was not just about a mark, but really about pulling together all those design and visual systems in an integrated way. They were very fragmented, which was really a missed opportunity for the city. Everything from newspaper, which there was quite a bit of at the time, television, publications, and of course the fact that the city really didn't have a simple, symbolic mark to represent it. It was represented by a city seal, like most cities. And that city seal was an amalgam of history, probably input from many, many people at the time. So it didn't function very well as a clear, distinctive symbolic representation. The mark itself evolved after about a year that I had been on the job as a designer. I'd been working on a lot of other things, including a design system for the city. But you want to have something that is it's memorable, that has some intellectual content, and that's very simple. And it didn't take long to begin to look around and understand that the city's history, much of it had to do with the flour mills that were growing up along the Erie Canal at the time, powered by grist mills and wheels. And also in its current day, the city was represented or known as being a flower city because of the lilac festival. So as I started to look at those two images, both the lilac flower as well as the wheel of the grist mill, they kind of came together. And in fact, at one point, I've told this story, I can remember overlapping them. And they seemed to evolve as a graphic that embodied both of those elements. And that became the impetus for the mark.
And I think it's one of those things where, again, like looking at and seeing pieces of it and being like, oh, this makes sense. Like, this is like something that on actual physical paper, like when you put it together, I was like, oh, this makes sense, and creates such a unique, identifiable shape. Erich, I do want to take a minute and talk about like with like the fact that you've now, and I'm going kind of out of chronological order of history here, but you've spent so much time now dealing with this shape in terms of art projects, community aspects of it, and you have a lot of experience with other art and design. Like, how has it been for you working with it in terms of like as an icon and as a shape?
Right. So, and some of this is covered in the documentary, but, my first interaction is with the logo is through skating through the city and seeing it on buildings. I'm also not from Rochester. And in the 90s, we were skating downtown. We're seeing it on the police cars we're running away from, things like that. And, at the time I was very early, in design, learning all the things. And, for us, at 90s, I was working with a local shop, Krugco. It was all about remix culture and turning to, having a little bit of that early city pride. You referenced that. So one of my first iterations is actually working with it, unauthorized, a little better way of phrasing it, an homage, to create a shop board that, by that point, especially along the throughway, the corridor, that icon was associated with Rochester and through the people, and it just made sense to us to like, all right, we're gonna do a tribute board, and I think we got a cease and desist within about a week, which is far better than New York State ever did when we did the same with their logo. But then over time, it's I didn't use it for a long time. A little bit of I gotta lay low. But as I got more involved, like cycled back around, and my life evolved, and then I became more involved with the arts world in Rochester. By that point, my relationship with Rochester had changed. And I viewed what I was doing in Rochester very differently. I viewed my interactions with it, and the logo, had come to just, it represented all of that life lived, and all the friends met, and all the found family along the way. And so for me, when I was starting to do fundraising, for my gallery and stuff, I was integrating that as art forms, deconstructing skateboards, and at that point, I'm now analyzing the forms, the wedges of the flower, and cutting them over and over again out of skateboards, and really learning the intricacies of every single curve, line, and form of that. And then again, as my own 20 plus years of design history, it just took on a new appreciation of it from the design and professional side. And then, especially as we ramp up to now with the celebration of the Mark, it is inextricably tied from Rochester. It's a secret symbol. It's a secret society. I wear the Mark. Everyone's got tattoos the city logo on their body, and you see it like, Rochester, yeah. and if the city had tried to do that, it would never have worked. But because there was, at first that little bit of rebellion against we're going to do it whether you want us to or not. And then a little bit of a tacit, all right, we're going to see where it goes and watch what happens. It was allowed to organically evolve so that it just means so much more to the residents of Rochester, or folks who've left Rochester, than just this city mark. Mm-hmm. And it is such a unique story. There's people who will tattoo brand marks on them, whatever, from the clothing brands they like, things like that. But that city pride is a very different thing. And it's the stories that are all tied to that.
Mm-hmm. We actually have gotten calls from other municipalities. Yeah. Since I've been here, I've received calls from, I can think of one, a small city in California, asking, how did we do that? Mm-hmm. How did we make the Mark so popular? And the answer was, I'm not sure. It was before my time. I think it's the only city that we can find that's got a Mark that's 50 years old.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's so unique. Mm-hmm. And I think for all the reasons that you were just talking about, Erich, as well, it's it means something different to everybody. And everybody's using it in a different way. It's so adaptable. And yeah, it is a unique model. I mean, I think that's one of the most fascinating parts of the story is that it was born under a corporate model of branding where you don't let people use it. Yeah. People aren't supposed to touch it. And I know Barbara can talk about this too. And somewhere along the way, people just started using it.
They were going to use it. Yeah. They were going to use it. They were using it. Yeah. So what we did, it was before my time. And again, in the documentary, Nate interviewed me and captured the moment where I said, thank goodness we had people with some foresight who originally created it and then saw the popularity of it and recognized the value in the city and the residents of the greater Rochester area embracing it and the pride that we have in it to give the policy some flex. I've worked for nearly 40 years in the advertising and marketing business. I have never experienced a mark like this where you allow people to use it. There are certain uses you can't do, but there are a lot of uses that you can do, and you can leverage it for commercial and non-commercial purposes, which is just not typical for any other brand.
Which I think is what's so specifically, again, not just unique, but is also a case of something that you, again, hope for in any sort of an artistic pursuit, whether it's, again, more, technical, more design-based, or more artistic, is that literally the fact that people are tattooing it, people want to use it, but also the fact that the city has managed to find a balance of being like, let's protect like the identity of the city, but let's encourage people to still be able
to celebrate it.
To celebrate it, exactly. Of like multiple avenues I want to go from here, but I'm going to take a second because we're talking about like the history of it. And Nate, be like, one of the things that I was so struck by in the documentary is how much archival footage you have, how much archival material. What was it like trying to amass that wide like swath of stuff that you managed to have?
Man, it was an epic adventure. It was a journey. We have some space over at the library, which is a lot of photo lab archival materials, slides, digital or not digital. It's everything pre-digital, basically. So I would explore over there. I would take an hour out of my day because for years I was also I'm still a digital media specialist and responsible for photography and content creation. So I've got my daily job stuff, but I'd take an hour and I'd go over to the photo vault and I'd explore and I'd find Lee Green's personal portfolio and I would just get so excited about it. I'd pull out boxes of beta tapes, gigantic tapes that we had digitized. I pulled out my old camcorder and digitized high 8 tapes from the 90s. So you've got all these eras of analog media, and you got to figure out how to get them digitized. But it's great. We have a lot of slides digitized. We've got we worked with Visual Studies Workshop and RIT Archive, the Carey Collection. We've got a lot of people to thank for where we are right now as a team effort.
Lee, I have a question based on the fact that we're talking about like archival materials and how things were made, but I feel like nowadays we tend to talk about like either slides or paper products or even hand-drawn logos as something that adds texture to things, whereas when you were originally working on this and working for the city as a graphic designer, so much of the design that you worked on at the time is so beautifully clean and elegant. Can you talk about was that a style that you just kind of like found at the time, something that you wanted to work in, or is that naturally what was required because of being a municipality?
I don't know that it was so much a municipality as it was just the basic fundamentals of good design. The best of design is clean and simple and straightforward and not embellished. When you start to over embellish things, you end up with an amalgam of not so good material. So that was really the foundation for much of the design work. And it was important to create a sort of a common, if you will, visual voice for the city. At the time, that was something that 50 years ago, corporations were pretty good at. They got it. Government organizations and cities, not so much. It wasn't really on their radar. And that in itself made it a wonderful opportunity to be able to have that clean state and that degree of autonomy. And that worked out really well.
And something else I want to ask you about is there's this I think there's some footage and some photos of you presenting to people at the time of you designing it. I think it was like a slide projector, and you're kind of trying to sell people on the idea of why this is the new logo that Rochester should be looking at to represent the city. Do you remember anything about like what you tried to say or how you tried to convince them, or was it just about clean design at the time?
Well, it's ironic because a lot of what I was doing then is not unlike what I did in my initial years at IBM. If you gather up all the visual representations of a brand, or in that case, at that time, of a city, and you put them together and you showcase them either on a wall or in slides and images, it becomes pretty clear very quickly that the visual expression is very fragmented, and it's not doing the hard work that it could be doing on behalf of the city. So I'm sure that, I don't have that presentation anymore. It was probably a 35 millimeter slide presentation, but I expect that was much of it. It was all about showing the current opportunity.
Nate, you said you have
Yeah,
it?
I do, Lee. I've got that. The 35 slides. If you
Oh,
ever,
you do?
if you ever want to see it.
Okay, on my next trip up there.
Yep.
Nate, I love in this case, like, I feel like if I were you, my office would just be filled with like ephemera at this point, like of all of the pieces making this.
Oh, it is. It's awesome. It's my own little City Mark wonderland down there. Seriously, you should come down sometime. Anybody. Yeah, no, I've got metal work. I've got Magnus Apollo's Sea Creature, and Sean Dunwoody, all these artists that are doing stuff with it now, but then a lot of Lee's work too from the time, because like you were saying, just beautiful work, Lee. I mean, it's so simple and clean. You know what you're looking at. You're like, oh, this is the city. I can tell because, it's just because it's well designed. And I think that's one of the coolest things that's come out of this project. I'd like to take a little bit of credit for it, at least, that I think the city's, we're really paying attention again to brand standards and what the city of Rochester looks like, where it's placed, and being consistent.
I think it's always a challenge with any brand, is because of the law of chaos. I mean, it's just people start to want to add their own logo. They want their own thing, and it's just a constant struggle to keep people focused. I think I'm really proud at Rochester's smart. Rochester's ahead of the curve on so many things, but we are doing that every day at the city.
I think, especially if you also look at, I don't remember how many years ago it was because time, I don't know. But like there was a point where every like major brand was redesigning every logo into just like a generic like Helvetica-y sans serif thing. Like there was that whole like when the Gap redid it and everyone was like, what are you doing? Like, but I think that there is that tendency where people want to put their own like stamp on it. People want to make changes. People want it to be fresh and different. But I think it's so important, and it's also so unique that a mark as good as this one still looks just as good right now as it did when it was originally designed.
People get used to things.
Yes.
It's around them all the time, so that they start to take advantage, or they start to forget that it is a powerful thing and that it does a lot of work already for you. So, and this has been true at every brand I've been at, that you have to protect it, you have to defend it, and and if you adjust it, you enhance it just slightly, because it needs to be close enough to a recognizable brand, but far enough away to make it interesting. Honestly, this hasn't changed hardly at all. I think millimeters, if and when we use the mathematically precise version of the mark versus the hand-drawn version of the mark.
Yeah. And pardon, this is not going to come out terribly eloquent, but like there is a pillar sign on by the waterfront, and the mark is wrapping around it, and it's in 3 dimensions. And I was like, oh, what a smart use of that! Like how interesting, like to use it in that way. But I also think that's a case of it takes people who like originally were like very talented and made this, and then are continuing to be talented in the way that they're continuing to use it and find new ways to keep it fresh and interesting.
That example you're giving is actually a city use. And again, I've worked at places where you could be taken to brand jail for doing something like wrapping your logo around something on purpose, or any of the colors that you see it in. It's just usually not allowed.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm curious. Can I ask a question here, Lee? When you guys came up, did you notice any of those modern applications. Did you get a chance to walk around?
Oh, he's muted.
I think you're muted.
Oh, I think we lost Lee's audio. So
We'll come back to that.
great. While we're unmuting Lee, we're just going to take a really quick short break. When we come back, we will have more with our guests talking about the City Mark. We'll be right back here on Connections.
Support for your public radio station comes from our members and from Mary Cariola Center, proud supporter of Connections with Evan Dawson, believing an informed and engaged community is a connected one. marycariola.org.
This is Connections. I'm Matt DeTurck, sitting in for Evan Dawson. We are talking about City Mark, a Rochester icon, a new documentary about the logo of the Flower City. And I am beyond thrilled to be talking here today with Lee Green, the City of Rochester's first graphic designer and City Mark originator, Nate Miller, the City of Rochester digital media specialist and filmmaker behind the documentary, Barbara Pierce, the City of Rochester communications director, and Erich Lehman, artist, designer, and curator of Gallery 1975. Nate, you had a question for Lee.
Yeah, Lee, I was just curious when you came up for the premiere, which it was such an honor to have you here, and we're really grateful that you took the time and got up here. I know it was a bit of a struggle, but I was curious if you had time to walk around and see any of the modern Mark applications, the official city Mark applications that we were mentioning, the wraparound pillars and sandblasted into the floor.
I didn't see some of the things that you've described there, but we did have a chance to walk around and go into a number of stores and restaurants, and I saw quite a few representations of the Mark on plaques and on other materials, and it allowed for engaging in a conversation with some of the shop owners or restaurant owners. And it was not only very gratifying, but it was also very obvious that they took a great deal of pride in being able to showcase that mark in their businesses.
I'm so intrigued by, like, in the process of the city itself choosing when and where to use the logo. Is the Communications Bureau involved in, like, when the Parks Department wants to use it and stuff? Do you guys go through like a brand approval process for official use of it around?
There are a lot of standard uses that there's a lot of departments in the city, and it would be overwhelming to try to manage all of the places. But there are official documents, there are official uses, there are places we want people to use it in a consistent way, signage. But when there are large scale things like wrapping the mark around, we are looped in and we're made aware of the plan.
Yeah, I think that it's that balance of how big and how small and when to use it. I think that is notable because, again, people want to use it. People really want to put it on stuff. But there's an amazing part of the doc also where Tom D. Asher, who owns Shop Peppermint, talks about it being on the garbage cans, on the like toters, and being like, oh, wow, this city is so proud of its logo that it is on all the garbage cans.
I actually, again, back in the 90s, my brother pulled one off and had it hanging in his house. And when he left Rochester, he gave it to me, and it is still just magneted up onto my fridge. You know, it was falling off. I want to put that. We didn't go fully pull off. But yeah, and I think that's where that odd relationship with it, but that for a lot of us came from. It's just, it is on there. It's on just so many items and throughout that are the cities, right? And I think when you look at what is the differentiation, like what the city is making sure is, and what is, you know, what the residents know is official city versus either licensed or even unauthorized, whatever. I think because of the standardization and brand guidelines, it's rare that I feel that people get confused. Mm-hmm. You know when it's an artistic license versus it is official city. There's just so much more to like the official city ones that are like, oh yeah, no, that's legit.
Yeah, there is a balance, and that's exactly the goal, is to ensure there's no confusion.
Yeah.
That's the key, because it is still on our uniforms.
Yeah.
And if somebody comes to your house and says that I'm with the city, you need to believe that they're
Yeah.
from the city, and you can't have people walking around with things that look like uniforms. It's one example of something we actually just talked about today. When we get requests for things that look too close to that, or it's in a business logo,
Right.
People will get confused and think that perhaps the city's behind that organization when we're not. So that's the key, and that's the one thing that we're always watching for, is clarity.
Yeah, and I think even the if we're going to talk about like the application process, it is simple. It's a website, and it's $100, and it is very approachable. You know, even I was looking at the current one. After all,
You're talking about the process for getting
to
a trademark.
licensing the logo, and the restrictions really are minimal. As far as it's very clearly spelled out, and they make sense, and you don't feel like, as a creative, you don't feel stifled. It's like, oh, cool, yeah, I'm able to put up my idea, and I think my first one was approved in less than 12 hours on a Friday night. Like, I put in on a Friday night after
We
like
work 24/7.
Yeah,
sometimes not on purpose.
I
but
put
geez.
it in, and this is many years ago. It was like 2016 or something. I put it in right after they first started the licensing. I put it in for reasons that night, and when I woke up, I got the approval at like 8:00 on a Saturday, and it blew my mind.
And I think that's, again, like, speaking to, like, again, the work that the team is doing, like, at the city, in terms of trying to, like, encouraging the community, but also being able to celebrate our community, because that's ultimately, I feel like, on a, I don't want to say loftier, but like, is literally like the role of the government. It's literally here to support the people and living their best lives in the community. The website URL for the information about this is cityofrochester.gov/citymark50. And again, not trying to sound too complimentary, but like, it's so straightforward, because the information's there on how to license it. The information about screenings of this documentary are there. But also, there's been so much else in this celebration that has been happening and is coming up. You guys just literally had an entire festival about it. Like,
We
Barbara, can you
did
talk about-
Flowerfest. So Flowerfest was supposed to be one time, one shot. We had a drone show. We had a full day with vendors selling their City Mark apparel and jewelry and other things, and we had music and food trucks, and it was supposed to be a one-time deal, and now apparently we have to do this every year, which is
Victim
great.
of your own success.
Yeah, and we had a great event down in the High Falls district. We'll do it again next year, so keep an eye out for that. But all of this started this year. Nate and I, again, from the beginning, 4 or 5 years ago now, began planning for the documentary, but then how could we make it something that could reach everyone in our community? So the documentary itself, we had a premiere. We've the Rock Cinema had several free showings. The Little is coming up and having several free showings. We'll have library free showings, and all of those available showings are at that website. And we'll also, WXXI is planning to show it on their air. WXXI was a production partner with the city and helping us put the movie together. So we're excited for them to show it on their air this fall. In September, I think, is the plan. So, and then we've also got a book coming out. It's a coffee table book, which will be available through the Friends of the Public Library. And that'll be at the end of July. So you can watch for that. We'll have art going up. We've got a youth group that's painting a large mural at MLK Park. That'll be in July and August. We've got a huge custom piece of capital art, a sculpture, going on the Sister Cities Bridge this summer. That's going to be really neat to see.
Yeah.
We'll catch a lot of content around how that thing goes up, because that's going to be cool. It's do you remember how tall it is? 30 feet.
I don't.
It's tall. Let's just say it's tall.
But it's an outdoor sculpture
It'll be
of
outdoor
the Mark.
in the middle of the Sister Cities Bridge. It'll be of the Mark. We did an RFP with our friends in the Department of Environmental Services 2 years ago now.
2 years ago, yeah.
And
Had a
so that'll be
panel, a
going
jury,
in.
yeah.
That's slated for this fall again, probably in October. By October, it'll be going up and be finished this fall.
So this really is a year-long celebration.
Yeah, we started in May. We're going to see it through. We'll have official anniversary merchandise with our friends of the public market, and that'll be coming up in July and August. 6x6, we were just talking about 6x6. They did a partnership with us. There's a whole City Mark theme, a whole wall full of City Mark art.
At Rochester Contemporary right now?
6x6 through July 25th. Wow. Yeah, so go out and check that out. It's amazing. And what else did I forget about? I think that's everything. That's a lot. I think that's everything.
I was just going to say, I was like...
And on top of our day job, we've done all of this other stuff. It's a lot.
Yeah.
In terms of the doc screening in that case, you had some screenings during Flowerfest in that case. Did you get any sort of feedback from the community on getting the first chance to see it?
People were so excited. It was awesome. We did 3 screenings in a row in, what was it, High Falls?
Mm-hmm. In the old Waterworks building there.
Waterworks building, that's right. And it was standing room only. In fact, it was sitting room only. You know, we pulled out all of the chairs that we could, and then we still didn't have room, so people just sat down on the floor. And it was awesome. It was very exciting.
We're trying not to take, at least, and I say to Nate, for him, I try not to take offense to the fact about how many people say, wow, that was really good. And I think, how did you not expect it to be phenomenal? It is a great film. It's a really fun story. It's easy to watch. It's only 70 minutes. So
yeah, I think people are surprised when they hear we made a film about a logo. You know, the main character is a 2-dimensional graphic illustration, but it works because there's so many people who are so passionate about it and using it in so many ways. So I always said the film I would like it to be half origin story and half modern engagement. Mm-hmm. Well, then you've got 50 years in between. So, you know.
A lot of content.
Yeah, I did my best. But people, there's a really good energy about it. It feels so good. I just need to take a second here and to say thank you, Barbara, and to thank you to the mayor for letting me do it.
Right.
You know, I mean, I think like Lee got that flexibility in 1974 to 76. They said, you know, he had a director who said, "Go ahead, free reign, and look what we got." And I feel similar now in that I was giving quite a bit of creative freedom to. A lot of creative editorial control, and I appreciate that, and I think the film is really honest for it.
Yeah. I think that one of the things that's great about it, again, not to be like, wow, they made this in-house, but literally the fact that it feels not just so researched, but it feels so well made, so handcrafted, and also so honest in terms of its portrayal of like the challenges of the city and then what has like come from it and how the logo has really been useful and engaging in that case. Reiterating that if you would like to see the documentary, there are 3 upcoming free screenings at the Little Theater. The first one is this coming Sunday, July 5th, as well as screenings on July 8th and 13th. You can go to thelittle.org for more details for the trailer to reserve seats. And then there are screenings at the Rochester Public Libraries in July, August, and September across various branches. And then Movies with a Downtown View screening at Parcel 5 outdoors in September, I think is again just like what a great way of like celebrating like within the space. I think that's so cool.
We're trying to. Well, we've scheduled the screenings this way to kind of force people to come together because that's part of the objective of all of this effort anyway, is to remind us that we're in Rochester, we're all in this together, and to remind us of something we all agree on, which is the City Mark and the love of it. After we do these screenings, WXXI, as I mentioned, on TV, will run it on their air, and then soon after that, we'll have it online, and we'll have it via City of Rochester websites and also our YouTube channel. Yeah. So if you can't get to Rochester to see it live and in person, then just wait a couple months and it'll be available.
That's awesome. You mentioned a coffee table book. We've already talked about the extensiveness of the research that is involved in the actual doc itself. What was involved in the book process in terms of trying to like differentiate it or complement the doc? Like, does it include some of the same stuff, different stuff?
It's It has to include some of the same stuff because of Nate's. Nate was the originator of the story in the documentary, and so a lot of it's coming from that. But I will say that the book goes into a little bit more visually. You can linger over some of the pages. It dives into the history a little bit more. We work closely with our city historian on the book. So a lot of the images, actually, you may have used some of them in the documentary as well, but there's additional images in the book and additional stories in the book. But it is a coffee table book. You can get into it you open it and you can read the page and you're not out of order. But it does go through history and it goes through where we were and the information around it. But I think that
It's a different experience.
a completely different experience. That was our plan, our hope.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Right. And like Barb said, it's the kind of book where you can just open it up and, you don't have to read it from front to back. Every page is going to give you a little bit of history.
And I need to just do a shout out to all of the partners, internal and external, because the comms team, we had a lot of these activities going on, but each one of these requires other team members. I mentioned Department of Environmental Services, who helped us with the sculpture. There's Department of Recreation and Human Services, who are helping us, and with the Rock Paint Division on the mural. The historian, our law department. You mentioned the book, and the first thing that flashed through my mind is getting the rights, speaking of rights, to all of the images and making sure that if they weren't the city's imagery, that we made sure we went and got rights for all of the stuff in all of the places. So it was really a 4-year plus labor of love, all of these.
Yeah, I can't wait to see the book. Like, again, the doc is great, but I literally am like, oh, great. I want to deepen it. I want to look for more information.
And those will be available at the public library, and we're working with the Friends of the Public Library.
That's awesome. Lee, I have a question for you about, so we talked a little bit about like leading up to the Mark and influences on it, but I'm curious about like, your career and your design influences after the Mark. Is there anything that I can ask about in terms of like, what did you like go on to do, or what did you move on with in terms of how did this influence what you did afterwards?
Well, as I mentioned, the approach to evaluating IBM's identity and expressions was very similar. So the experience at the city of Rochester provided me with a wonderful experience and education to allow me to do that. I went on to work at IBM for some 36 years. When I left, I was a corporate vice president responsible for the IBM brand globally and all of the company's visual expressions. And so I had a wonderful career at IBM. And a couple of memorable experiences, and I'll just share one with you very quickly. At one point, after I'd been with the company for about 3 years, they asked me if I wanted to move back east and get involved in a new business, a new product. And I said, yeah, I'd be very interested in doing that because the east part of the country was the headquarters. And I said, well, what is this new product? And the manager I was working for at the time said, I'm really not exactly sure, but I think it's called the personal computer. So off I went on the adventure of supporting all the design associated with the introduction of IBM's personal computer and all that history as well. And, we did a 100-year anniversary for IBM prior to my leaving and created a lot of very similar materials to the types of things that you're talking about. It went on for a year. And I think the wonderful thing about it was less self-congratulatory on IBM's part about what a great company we were. And it was more about all of the things that we had been able to do to help make positive changes in the world. And so that was tremendously gratifying. So those are some of the things I did after I left the city of Rochester.
One, I think that's, amazing. To minimize the effect of that. But two, that's also a case of, again, where I know everyone has a different sense of scale and what they're looking for. But I personally kind of love the fact that the City Mark here in Rochester was almost like a test case of a test ground for you before moving on to IBM. I think that's super cool. And that's what I kind of, again, one of the things that I love about our community is that I feel like we have unbelievably talented people here who are doing world-class work. Sometimes we just have a little trouble like getting that out further, but I know the Communications Bureau, obviously you guys are working on that right now.
It's my number one objective. When Mayor Evans gave me this opportunity to join his administration, and I said yes, didn't take me long to realize how much we are our own worst enemies as far as appreciating what we have.
Sure.
I think that what's my biggest takeaway from this effort has been the young people in our community that you get to a certain age, you get to a certain part of your career, you just don't go out to the bars anymore. You don't engage with, I'm not skateboarding, I'm not doing any of the things I used to when I was very, very young. But I'll tell you, the young people are really embracing our city. They don't know what we used to be. They don't care what we used to think we were gonna be. They are embracing what we are today, and they're the ones tattooing the mark on their bodies. They're the ones living here, moving downtown, making the neighborhood of play a very vibrant community. And I think those of us who've been here a long time need to open up a little bit, get out a little bit more, and experience the city the way our young generations are experiencing it, because it is extremely positive. And I think this effort this year, like I said, there couldn't be a better time for us all to take a moment and take some pride in our city.
Erich, as to say, I feel like, again, you're not to keep using the word community, but you're so deep rooted in community aspects of it. Like, do you feel like that is a case of where it's just kind of time ebbs and flows and different groups like find something?
Yeah, it's, as Barbara was talking, I just think back to like the 2008 to 2012, which was this really vibrant rebirth in the arts community in Rochester, which then it has kept going. But a lot of it was fueled, by folks who lived here, but just as much, there were a lot of us who weren't from here, and we didn't have the baggage, and we came here and we saw just the possibility. And I remember back then talking a lot of times about like our work is trying to take a mirror to be like, look how awesome Rochester is. Like, we can do so much here that would mean nothing in a big city, but here it means something, and it's received. It's well received. It's wanted. It creates new opportunities for other artists, and just other everything. It's much say like obviously as an arts advocate, arts cheerleader, I look to how the arts, like reminds a city how much potential there is. And like I said, at about the time where the city seemed to be taking a little more lax approach of like what was going on, and working with us secretly on the side without, giving us a little bit of permission here and there. And but I think it was that confluence of just the new energy. We're like, yeah, it's cool. Like I was here as a student in the very heyday of, IBM, Bausch & Lomb, Kodak, and those things. I was working with some of those companies, through various cool projects that died on the vine, during those times. I remember, as we're bringing up the art stuff, through wall therapy and things like that, we're watching, that's the same summer that Kodak, hit, announcing its bankruptcy. And, through all of that, it was like those of us who were just like, yeah, that's cool and it's great. It sucks. But you can still do so much here. We can still do, like, there's so much potential here. And for me, I often, joke, I went to RIT, left, I came back to RIT for grad school, and then I forgot to leave. And, I've been working at RIT as my full-time job this whole time. But I often say, like, as my friends were leaving, they were working at the big companies and they lost their jobs, so they had to leave. And I was like, I don't have a call to leave yet. I'm supposed to be here for a reason, and I don't know what yet. And in the meantime, I'm doing all this stuff, and I remember it was like years into it going, oh yeah, this is why I'm supposed to be here. It's because all the stuff I've been doing, and I didn't even realize that what impact it was having. And, again, building into that city pride and wanting to give back, going from just like little scrubs skating through this downtown getting yelled at to, like I'm gonna donate thousands of hours of my time to get art into the city and make it as awesome as possible. And yeah, it's that the organic nature of all of it.
Yeah. I don't want to, again, like, no, I do. I want to say that, like, in this case, like, I hope that you guys feel like, both from the work that you've done in the community, Lee from the work you've done on the logo, and then Nate and Barbara from the work that you've done at the city, both on this dock, that I feel like continuing that sense of pride and legacy, I feel like is so important and has had such a positive impact. And also, again, the doc is so good that, like, I hope that you feel a sense of like, oh, this is like a really cool thing I made.
I feel that right now. Thank you. I need to say thank you because you've mentioned it a few times and I appreciate it. Because I only really hear about it when somebody comes up and says thanks. I'm kind of a nerd. Like, I've never made a movie before. I'm not a filmmaker. I don't.
You are.
I have made a film.
I literally had to build a profile for you on Letterboxd so I could add the film to Letterboxd so people could watch it.
Yeah, so I've been trying to go to all the screenings and meet people and just shake people's hands because what a great experience, what a cool moment in time. I'm glad we're all celebrating it together. Seriously.
And it's, again, what a great celebration. People should definitely go to the cityofrochester.gov/citymark50 to find out all the details on ways to continue to celebrate the mark over the course of the year with screenings of the documentary City Mark, a Rochester Icon, and find out more details about all the other ways you can engage with the logo. I want to thank Lee Green, Nate Miller, Barbara Pierce, and Erich Lehman, my guests, for being here today for this discussion. We could have gone on another hour, but thank you so much. Thank you again to the Connections team for all the hard work here at WXXI. This is Connections. I'm Matt DeTurck.
This program is a production of WXXI Public Radio. The views expressed do not necessarily represent those of this station, its staff, management, or underwriters. The broadcast is meant for the private use of our audience. Any rebroadcast or use in another medium without expressed written consent of WXXI is strictly prohibited. Connections with Evan Dawson is available as a podcast. Just click on the Connections link at WXXInews.org.